Hey everybody, first of all, I'm just making this to respond to the many takes on my blog post at Oakland News Now about now interim Chief Administrative Officer Stephen Falk. And I didn't respond on Facebook because that's not my platform and it's someone else's. I prefer to respond on a platform that I own, at least even partially as in YouTube or entirely as in Oakland News Now. So the reason for the Falk entry was I first now about a week ago, time flies, actually come Thursday, it would have been a week ago, today's Wednesday, saw a tweet that Mayor Schaaf had proposed hiring the former Lafayette city manager for the interim post strictly because he resigned in protest to the city's alleged position on climate change, and he favored high density development, which, look, I can understand from Lafayette's historic perspective why it doesn't want high density development, even with the current issues we have today. Anyone who knows Lafayette and where it's located can get why Lafayette might react negatively to a sudden desire to build up rather than out. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying I understand it. But I digress. What bothered me was that a number of people, including some real estate investment trust CEOs who live in Oakland, I'm not going to name names, seem to be supporting this. And Falk's focus was high density development. There was nothing said about solving the homeless problem. But what really got me on top of all that was, had Libby done what she did and what I believe she was going to do anyway, which was hire Falk, he would have been yet one more white, primarily, or if not white, then only black female, okay, as opposed to African American male, chief operating officer or chief administrative officer or assistant chief administrative officer in the city of Oakland since 2014, late, when she was elected. A note, I said chief administrative officer or assistant chief administrative officer. So I wrote the post deliberately leaving out a whole cacophony of examples that led to the mayor's making the decision that she did, which I disagreed with, and became the talk about Libby around town, talk that I refused to echo strictly out of our friendship. And so a number of things, I'm just being very candid here, caused me to change my mind. First of all, it was seeing Falk being elevated by Libby. Then, just days before, there are a couple of advancements to candidacy hires that were made that were basically one white person going out, another white person coming in, and a kind of a reckless abandon that didn't seem to echo the fact that the city of Oakland needed to do a better job of making sure that, in particular, Libby, not so much the city of Oakland, but Libby needed to do a better job of making sure that she had African Americans representing her directly. I'm not talking about someone who was a department head under the chief administrative officer. I mean directly, people in her office, people around her, because that's how Oakland has been but also it would, frankly speaking, erase a lot of the talk about her. Period. Unless, of course, she felt the talk was true and didn't care, which scared me. And there was something else, too, that on top of all that was and is a conversation in society that goes like this. Well, that's the way it is. And it comes from African Americans in particular describing what someone else does in society happens to be against African Americans. As opposed to saying this needs to change, you have a number of people, particularly younger voices, saying, well, that's the way it is, and they just. Well, that's dangerous. And then here comes Andrew Yang commenting, well, by 2053, the standard African American family will have no value whatsoever. In other words, not no life value, of course, but no household wealth. And that's based on a straight line projection. It's not true. But what bothered me was that there was no one challenging his meaning or asking him, since he purported to be a tech executive, he isn't really, hey, have you actually invested in black tech businesses, black tech entrepreneurs? The answer is he hasn't. Okay? So that he was sort of left out there without challenge, not sort of, but was left out there without challenge, was to a degree bothersome. But as you can tell, these events for me were stacking on top of each other. So Falk was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. So I released it, and it got a great deal of traction. It was a very personal story. There were some people who, it would seem, and I didn't respond, didn't really like the message, and so rather than just saying they didn't like the message, it is jarring, okay, would try to challenge me on these pseudo-intellectual lines like, well, where did you get this, or where did you get that? And others would say, well, it's quite obvious what he's saying is true here, and right. In particular, Davey D, I appreciate. And I responded to Davey because I've known Davey for 3 decades. Davey D and I go all the way back to the University of California at Berkeley, Eshelman Hall Library, and where he was working and I was studying sometimes with my then girlfriend Lauren. And that was 19, ready for it? 1986 to 1987. That's when the period of time that I first met Davey. And we've gotten to know each other. Our paths have crossed many times because of what we do and living in Oakland, and we're friends. No, we don't always agree on everything, but so what? Who does, right? Big deal, you know, Crimea River. Anyway, but Davey understood where I was coming from, and he looked at it, I thought, with unvarnished eyes. Thank you. So the mayor's office, in the form of Justin Burton, responds back by text. Well, if you really want to look at it from a race and equity perspective, I really hated the response that I saw, but it was also, unfortunately, sadly, one I predicted. That, he continues in the text, that, well, the mayor has hired more African American males at department head levels. When she came in, there were only 2 black men over department heads. Now there are, I think she had 6 replaced white women. That wasn't the point. Because it forced me to do something I didn't want to do. And that was to advance another video, which showed that Mayor Schaaf had not at all had a, how do I put it? Mayor Schaaf had not put out a photograph of her staff, and then they had a single black male in it, up to 2017. And the reason why I say that is because I was invited to her uh, th- thank you party in mid-year 2017. Uh, and as the staff lined up for a picture, my blood ran cold because there was no black man. Now you have to understand, if you don't live in Oakland, the context. Oakland is known as being a pioneer place, particularly if you're African American or African, and a place that will give you a fair shot. This is something that has been part of Oakland's history. Just even the time when there were those who said, well, like Jerry Brown says, all your department heads are black, right? But look, I never knew of anyone white who was qualified, who wanted to work in that department, who didn't get a job. So to make that mention was really at a time it was really hard for African Americans to get great jobs to begin with. I thought was really reckless on Jerry's part. But I digress. This is what I saw at the, you see? And not only do I have a photograph, I have, and I posted a full live stream so you can be at the party yourself, get a feel for what it was like. I mean, I had a good time. I knew many of the people there, Libby's parents and my godparents. All right. So I did something I didn't want to do. I went there. But I did so because I feel that Libby should know better. And on top of that, the other reason that really accelerated my actions, my desire to do the action, was the whole issue regarding David Silver of the Oakland Promise program and her Oakland Education Czar, and how Libby, when I first met Mr. Silver, and he's apologized for this, okay, but he did do this. His basic words were, "Hey, you know what? I don't believe I know who you are." When Libby introduced us, and it was really whoa. And let me explain real quick. It's not that he should have known who I was as a person or some micro celebrity. No, but when you meet a person, the common response is, "How are you doing? Nice to meet you." It's not, "Oh, I don't believe I know you." And he didn't mean it that way. He didn't mean it the way it came out. But when you're meeting someone for the first time, it's not a good response. Okay. He knew it was wrong. Libby knew it was wrong, but Libby didn't bother to correct him. And Libby's gone out of her way to protect him, and she's gone out of her way to protect people who, for the most part, have represented a kind of white male image that over the time when we've known each other, she seemed to have prized, but to a greater extent than I realized. And I'm being very blunt here. Because the overall problem in Oakland, going beyond Libby, is that our politicians have more often than not practiced personal politics. There was an elected official running for mayor. I'm not going to bother to say this person's name, but I really wrote in 2007 a very strong blog post why that person should not be mayor, and it had to do with my observation that that person would play personal politics. Okay? What I mean by personal politics is, I like this kind of person, so I want them in my office. I like that kind of person, so I want this. As opposed to a professional approach, which recognizes that you have to give the image that every person in Oakland has an opportunity to work for you, that every person in Oakland has an opportunity to advance. These are messages that should be natural and common to Oakland. But under Libby, with respect to black men, they have not been. So you can't say, and Libby's had this idea in her head that when it comes to African Americans as well, I've helped. And what I've explained to her, and explained to her in 2013 during the controversy regarding censuring 2 black Oakland council members. And she was accused of being racist. And she says, I'm not racist. The person that accused her of being such, I felt was wrong. And I said, Libby, but when we talked, I said, do not say that you've helped. You have people like myself who are your equals. Think of us as your equals. So when I talk about her having people next to her, her right hands, left hand being black, it goes back to that. Pick your equals. Pick the people that are in line to represent you directly. And when you do that, make sure that they're black males as well. Okay? Now, sure, she's done more than a terrific job of selecting black females, but why play black men off black women? What's that about? I could render a guess based on a personal episode that she and I had, but I'm not going to do that. But I've known her for 32 years. And what I've struggled with for much of the time has had to do with how she responds racially in a number of situations. And now being the leader of Oakland. And I have to tell you, I was the first person to say to her, to my knowledge, you should run for mayor. That was May 14th of 2009. Instead, she ran for city council. In 2010, I put out a blog post on San Francisco Chronicle when I was at City Bright, said, hey, she's going to run for mayor. Scared everybody to heck. Because they knew that if she ran, she would be formidable. The Libby that I wanted to be Oakland's leader, and admittedly first white female city CEO, was not the Libby that's doing the things that have caused Oakland to form the way that it has. And so I felt that with all of this, I had to simply take action. I had to remind my friend of what her friend, this friend, I'm not speaking for anybody else, me, expected of her as a person who stuck their neck out many years ago and said, she should be mayor. That's what this is all about, okay? And it's about saving a city I love so much and making certain, in my little small micro way, that it regains some of its past fairness toward people, regardless of not just race or sex, but also income. So there you go. And the other issue, and the other reason I did this to close, is that in my observation, there's a slow death of meaningful blogging and vlogging. And it's happened because journalism has come online and allowed people to look for articles and news, and expression has been pushed aside. When bloggers ruled the internet, we had, like Justin Hall, for example, or from the video blogging perspective, we had people like, well, name it, anyone from VloggerCon or Sprickets24, anyone or the pioneer vloggers on YouTube, or like Reneto, expressing their ideas. But now we don't have that. We have gamer vloggers, and we have people, comedians and all this, but we don't have people just talking to you for the most part. And when they do, those conversations don't get elevated like they used to. We need to get back to that. In fact, we're so devoid of it that when people actually hear something like what I'm saying or read it, they get shocked. Folks, that's going to destroy our democracy if we don't allow ourselves to express what's happening and what we see in the way that I'm doing with you here or via blog. So instead of the blog, I get, well, where'd you get this from? Where'd you get this? Hey, it's my perspective, okay? I'm sharing you my perspective. That was the whole point. It's really interesting. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube, please.